What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Unapologetically Black Male, where we talk about surviving the stigma, standards, and systems. Once again, my name is Dwayne Pate. I'm one of the hosts here. My brother EJ Stewart. As you all know, this podcast is meant to design to highlight the stories of African American men and really celebrate the stigma, standards, and systems that they had to overcome to be where they are right now. Once again, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, follow us on all social media outlets. You know the routine. We just want to make sure that we continue to promote this positive message of African American men, because society doesn't always provide a positive lens of us when it comes to our success and how we are impacting the world. Man, we have a great and wonderful guest. But he goes by the name of Dr. Dallas Dance, and I'm going to turn it over to him and let him give us a little bit background about himself, and then we'll kind of jump into the topic for tonight's discussion.
Dwayne, my man, thanks for the opportunity to be here with you and just to be in the conversation around such an important topic right now. Everyone knows me as Dallas. Some people know me as Sean. Either way, though, what you know is that a lot of folks with me will say what you see is what you get. I was the youngest superintendent of a large school system in the country. Started teaching at 20, my man. Assistant principal at 22. Born in Richmond, Virginia. The typical story that a lot of young Black men have. Went to public schools for elementary school, middle school, high school, HBCU for undergrad. So it was at Virginia Union. And really jumped into education feet first, and just said, look, I want to do whatever I can to help out young people. And we did that. Built some solid, high impactful teams, ran into my own issues and politics and scandal in Baltimore, lost 4 very close family members, in addition to a very public career, all within a 5-year period. And literally had to deal with my own issues of mental health and just saying, hey, I need to talk to someone. I need to deal with this. And I'm excited about the work that I'm doing right now to just talk to Black men, but particularly young Black men, about the need that we all have to let it out. And when we let it out, we see, Dwayne, the big part of this is really the healing process that comes along with it. Your profession does not define you. Where you come from, it does not define you. What really does define you is whether you're able to be a man and deal with any issues, concerns, or internal struggles that we might have, so that we can actually protect and uplift our own Black families.
Absolutely, man. You got a lot of experience, and you kind of gloss over some of this. Let's talk. Can we go back to you said you was assistant principal at 22?
Hey, man, I was teaching at 20,
and
that was always the running joke with students in faculty, like how young is he? Like how really old is he? Because I couldn't drink then, obviously. So became an assistant principal at 22 of a high school, and then I was a middle school principal at 24. And so God blessed me. I mean, I never really applied for a job other than to be a teacher and a superintendent. But when you grow up very, very quickly, and I have many friends who are, whether they're in the industry, whether they're doing other things, when you grow up very, very quickly, you forget very quickly at times that you're Black. And with that being the case, I have my mom, I have my grandmother, they tell me all these stories about things they experienced. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what they're talking about. But you always know that what mom and grandmother tells you, it may not be true in that moment to you, but over time it's going to come back. And so, even though I by society standards and other people, I may have achieved certain things by a certain age. The reality was, I think the biggest lesson that God continued to teach me, and that He continues to teach me today, is that none of that defines you. At the end of the day, it's your circle of folks. It's your own mentality around what is it that you need to do to put in your work to deal with your issues, your concerns, again, your internal struggles, which we all have. And if we can do that, then I think we get to a point where we really can live unapologetically Black.
Absolutely. Thank you again for coming on. And we often interview a number of gentlemen from all walks of life, and we always have the HBCU discussion. I'm just thankful this time it isn't another Morgan grad. I went to Delaware State, but Virginia Union, that's a great school, and definitely love it. Take us to your journey from Richmond to school. What were some of the things you had to go through? You said you survived the stigmas and society standards. This is what it's all about. Take us through some things that you may have experienced in your journey, or when you actually arrived in that position, being a Black male in the education system?
Absolutely. So, I was very, very fortunate. I had some caring teachers, some caring coaches. I played football, baseball, ran track at Armstrong High School in Richmond, Virginia, under Richmond Public Schools. And I had people who they cared for me. But most importantly, I had a Black mom and a Black grandmother who, let's be clear, they were not taking any crap. They may not have checked that homework, but it better be on the table when mom got home from the two jobs that she worked in. With that being the case, it was just one of those things, man, where if you're a mama's boy like I was, look, you're not gonna let mom down. And so it was, how do you make sure that you put every best foot forward, you make every good decision that you possibly can. But at the end of the day, we recognize, and my mom taught us very early on, that education was the way to really make sure that you're successful and that you make her proud. At the end of the day, too, though, I recognize, too, that even though I wanted to go to law school and I wanted to practice corporate and criminal law, there were so many young people, man, who looked just like me. And when I was at Virginia Union, and I know we talked about Morgan State, but my brother David Wilson is doing some amazing things at Morgan. I have to give him his props for that one. And I love Baltimore. So he's definitely doing some great things there. But I recognize that I was where I was because of great teachers, great coaches, and we needed more of them. And so when I had an opportunity through Alpha Phi Alpha and I pledged to Gamma Chapter Virginia Union University, I had a really opportunity to really say, how can I play a role in just the next generation of young people? And I just sort of put law school to the side for a little bit. Bill Hite, who's the current superintendent in Philadelphia school district, pulled me under his wing. He was my principal at the time, and he just my first year teaching, man, 20 years old. He said, look, you're going to be one of my administrators. And he put me with a walkie-talkie, and he said, look, go at it. And through trial and error, man, I just continue building solid relationships with not just teachers, but really with students too. And so as I progressed through the ranks, I never really applied for a position because all I kept doing was helping out young people. And what I found is that the Black men or young Black males were the ones who were gravitating to me, and I was gravitating to them because they look like me. And so as we have this conversation, whether it's around mental health, whether it's around what can we do to increase outcomes for kids in school, a large part of this, Dwayne, is making sure that our kids have access to people who look like them. If Black men, we're going to, erase the stigmas and the standards of mental health, then let's be clear, we need more Black mental health professionals. We need more Black men who are willing to step up and say, just like you or I, and even people like Charlemagne the God, saying, look, we need to take this head on. There is nothing wrong with saying that, I have a problem. I have to talk to somebody. I'm hurting here. I'm depressed here. There's some anxiety here. The more we're honest with ourselves, man, the more, again, we continue uplifting the Black community. And it's my belief that, Dwayne, if we can take care of the Black man, making sure that we're good from our headspace on, that it's going to support the Black women, ultimately supporting the Black family, ultimately changing the trajectory of Black children.
Absolutely. And I think you hit it right on the head when it comes to like the mental health piece and this like more Black male therapists. Because one of the things that me and EJ find ourselves being called unicorns because we all Black male therapists. And then another issue that you run into is like you want to help so many people, but you can only do but so much.
Absolutely.
And it's all about, and what it becomes down to kind of building a network and building, like letting us all come together. And I think sometimes that can be difficult for us as men because we like our space and we like to operate in our own identity in our own lane, but not understanding that we can reach more if we just come together and really kind of build up on a strong foundation to support our young Black men. Like you said, because, at working in the school system myself, the young, they enjoy when I come in the building. They like to see me. And when I come in the building, it's like I'm one of what, 3 Black men in the building?
Two or
so
three.
So it's like, of course I'm going to stand out, but it's just a matter of just kind of using that influence to make an impact and just kind of being a positive influence. So I definitely, 100% agree with you with the mental health therapist piece as far as Black men and how we can restore our role and our responsibility in leading our families.
Absolutely. And a large part of that, Dwayne, is really just being honest, man. And we recognize, and I was having this discussion with a few of my friends this past weekend, and my son said something that made me laugh. He just said, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to go talk to Dad because he's more real than you are." And what it made me realize is that we just have to be honest. And I don't know whether we don't really know how to do it. I don't know if we're really nervous about doing it. I don't know if we're worried about what people might think of us. But the reality is, man, if we're going to really change trajectory, we got to be honest with ourselves, which means being honest with our kids. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm hurting again. And I mentioned that earlier. But as Black men, it's okay to surround ourselves with folks who want us to do better, who want to see us doing better, who will have no problem saying, hey, brother, I love you, man. Are you good? And so whether it's with my own small circle, whether it's with people who are in extended circles of mine, I make it a point to try to connect with about 3 to 5 brothers a day. People I might not have talked to, in years, but just to see if they're good, man. Like just to say, hey, are you good? And with that being the case, you can't be doing this and say, okay, well, I don't know if this person's good or not, but I'm just going to do it. No, this is authenticity, is being genuine. What can I do to support you? If I can support you and uplift you, then I'm going to make sure that we're changing the trajectory of our own lives, but also our kids. And so I try to be very, very intentional with my circle, with people who I know that, they might be hurting, or at the same time, you might be hurting and figure out, okay, well, why are my people not reaching out to me? The reality is it's okay to reach out to them too. Everyone goes through their own struggles. And particularly as Black men, we just don't talk about it. I remember having a very good friend of mine. I always call her Tommy, but I call her my homie. It's Tamika. And we'd always talk about, are you good? And she's the one who got me realizing, look, you got to talk about a few things. You can't just sit here and you have this title and you think that things are going well. Things are not always okay. And this whole idea that we have to live in this whole idea of toxic positivity, that's not life. There are some bad days. There are some effed up days at times. And the more we can admit that and figure out what's our role in it, or what can we do to start changing some of that? We don't have to live in our thoughts all the time, but we have to be honest with them.
And that's, and I love your journey in the sense that you had a mentor who kind of showed you early on that he had faith in you and was going to put you in position to do well. And then we talk about the mental health taboo and stigma that we face in our community, but especially with our young people who have so, many other things that they have to deal with that are right in their hands and right in their faces all the time. How do you begin to promote this space in education to help our young people navigate through their mental health struggles and ills?
A part of it, and I'm glad you mentioned that, EJ, a part of it really is, again, I can go back to this being honest with kids. When I became a superintendent, I was 30 years old, man. And so my hair was on fire. I wanted to change the world. But what I particularly wanted to do, and I was unapologetic about this, I wanted to change the lives of Black boys. Because I had to remind people, and it was very shocking to me, but I had to remind Black and white people that when I got out of the car in the morning, I'm still Black. When I go into a school board meeting, I'm still Black. And I'd be in meetings and people would say things about Black kids, and I look at them, and I remember saying to one person, this was a Black person, I said, I'm Black, right? And I'm a Black male, right? So I'm going to step out of the room and then I'm going to come back in so we can have a more intelligent conversation around this. But I think what kids saw is they saw somebody who was real. I would go into schools, I would talk to them. I would recognize that, a lot of kids, they don't see people who look like them in positions that they can aspire to be in. And even through my own journey where I had my own scandal, my own fall, I still stayed close to kids to say, you know what? Take this lesson from me. You can do it. Control your thoughts. It will be tough, but you know what? Talk about it. The more you talk about it, the more your actions will start to reflect it. I remember some of the best things I would say at graduation. I only talked 1 minute, but I love going to every single graduation. I would tell kids, watch your thoughts because they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. We all know about this. Watch your actions, they become your habits. But if you do not watch your thoughts, once they start, penetrating your head and they come out of your mouth, you're starting to speak life into that. And so one of the pieces of advice I would do, in addition to just being around them and showing them that, hey, you can do this, is I would tell them that the first 15 minutes of the day, take time for yourself. You got to figure out how are you going to motivate yourself internally in order to be able to motivate the world or to carry out whatever passion or mission you have in the world. Social media is not what you do the first 15 minutes. The news is not what you do the first 15 minutes. That is intended to attract audiences for some level of drama. And what we realize is that because we're in this highly politicized environment right now, it's all about tearing people down. And the reality for me is my goal is I want to bring people up. And so as individuals, who particularly Black leaders in education or Black leaders in other industries, as I'm keeping my ear to the ground on newspaper articles that may come out, I'm hitting people up. Are you good? What can I do for you? What support can we provide? Because at the end of the day, this is still a person that we're talking about. And no matter what we like to say, and I know some people say sticks and stones don't break your bones. Words hurt. Words absolutely hurt. Actions of people hurt. When I became a superintendent and someone told me like, look, no matter what you do, your face can be on the front of this newspaper. While it may not have hit then, it absolutely hit when it was on there. And no matter how human or how superhuman you think you are, you recognize very early on that you're human when you start to recognize that you're being broken down and you need to actually be lifted up. So, what I try to do is be very intentional, whether it's young people, whether it's adults, to say, we have a responsibility to uplift each other. Time is short. Life is short, but if you live it right, it's all we need. But we have to lift each other up in the process because we can't do it alone.
Absolutely. Wow. I think I have a question regarding like how you navigated, being as young as you were, becoming a teacher, then becoming an assistant principal, then becoming a principal, and then superintendent. How did you navigate those difficult conversations being a Black man in the room? Because there's not too many of us in the room. So you in the room. So how do you navigate that, the conversations and the tension that you experienced? Because I know that was,
and being young and having that having that old guard looking at you like, boy, you don't have no milk on your nose, whatever that nonsense is. How do you know anything? How did you do that?
You still wet behind the ears.
And
this is when being raised by a Black mom, Black grandmother, and they're both tattooed on me, because I lost one in 2017, lost another in 2019. It's going back to what grandma said when she said you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And you just don't understand what that means until you're placed in a situation where there are 30 people in the room, there are 3 Black people, you're the only Black man, and they're looking at you. And you recognize that I've listened so well to what people have said, but really what they've not said. And as opposed to really trying to offer something back to them, I would pose a question to the room. And the one thing I would always say to people, and regardless of the color, it would shut the room down, is I would say, are we making this decision based on your kid or someone else's? And it would just shut people down, Black and white, because when you're making a decision based on your own kid, that's a whole different level of expectation. And when you're making it based on someone else's kids, you might be a little, flexible with what you do, but you're not playing with your own kid. Whether you're a Black parent or a white parent, you're not playing with your kid. And so that was the question I always posed to people. And even when I got to the superintendency, and even as I work with districts now, I always will say, are you making this decision as it will impact your own kid? And it raises the bar for a lot of people. But I would also have to look at people when they would say to me, what you think, or what do you think our Black population would think about this? And I give them a look and almost say to them, like, do you think we have a meeting where we would talk about this as a Black population? Like, and I'd always be floored by the person who say, look, well, I do have Black friends or whatever. And I say, stop it. At the end of the day, we know that we are where we are because systemic racism has existed. And we have policies in places that have not, eliminated the achievement gap. They've exacerbated it. And post-COVID, it's only gotten worse. So at these particular times, we've got to be able to say, look, if we're not going to make this decision as if it's impacted our own kid, why are we making it? But at the end of the day, when you're having those types of not tough conversations, but bold conversations, you're going to get hit. And when people can't attack you professionally, they will go personal. And so I think one of the elements that I had to do in dealing with my own mental health is one, to recognize the role that I play in where I sit in life right now. But more importantly, to recognize that, and I'm a man of faith. So recognizing very early that, God doesn't make mistakes. We're exactly where we are for a reason. And so I've intended now, and I've done it very intentionally, very deliberately, to talk about my own mental health journey of things that it was just tough for me. I mean, there were tough days to get out of bed. And, I had a mental health day yesterday where I had to put the phone on Do Not Disturb. And I had, friends calling me like, are you good? Hey, I want to come and talk to you. No, today's not the day. But if we don't do things like that, where we recognize ourselves, and when we have to take a step back, we're not going to be good to anyone else. I have a good friend who will tell me, and she's a counselor. She'd say, look, you can't pour from an empty cup. But we try to do it so much. and we're not doing ourselves any good, but we're not doing the person that we're trying to support or think we're supporting any good too. If we can't take care of ourselves, we're not good to anybody.
You you brought up something in that discussion, and I just want to say, as far as uplift, right? I remember, when you took on your role, and it sounds weird, but when you get that to that level and you have that level of attention, you kind of have a celebrity about you, right? So I was like, I don't know that brother, but I'm always a fan of his. I support him, and it's funny, I owe somebody some money because we were having a discussion. Like, they were like, I think he's an alpha. I was like, nah, I ain't no alpha. I would know, because me and Dwayne are both brothers. So I was like, damn, damn, all this time I didn't know. But salute to that, of course. But
Absolutely.
you being in that position that you were in, and the school system that you were in, and we know the Baltimore area, and we know the struggle that the city has had one way or another with various things, and COVID being something that has been something none of us in this century have seen. What do we do? What do we expect from our educators to help specifically our Black and brown children in our education systems post COVID? What is it looking like for the future? What do you think?
And EJ, you're asking a loaded question. And so the first part of it is, when I became a superintendent at 30, you don't think about those things, man. I promise you, I'm one of the most, humble, down to earth people you would meet. I have people saying, look, so many people are following you. And I'm like, man, I go into a classroom, I'd say, look, don't follow me, let me go. And so one of the things I always wanted to do was just stay grounded and stay humble in the moment of leading that district, but most importantly, connecting with those kids. I think as we come out post COVID, and again, I said this earlier, I'll say it again. I love Baltimore, and so every time I come to the city, I always try to figure out what can I do to give back to young people and to the community. But I think as you look at educators right now, when you look at the future of education, we need accountability with compassion, and that's just not with students; it's also with teachers too. I think people miss the point that teachers have gone through a whole lot over the last 2 years, let alone obviously students. And so we're going to have some tough conversations in this country around what's the next level of the teaching force within the United States. There's a teacher shortage right now. There's a leadership crisis right now. There's a staffing crisis right now. I'm going to be with the Microsoft marketing team on Wednesday, and that's exactly what we're talking about. They're like, what do you think the biggest issue in education is? It's the staffing crisis. The reality is that young people want accountability. They also want compassion, but they also want individuals who recognize that they're people. And just like we struggle as adults with mental health, so do young people. I can't imagine. I was talking to a student 2 weeks ago when I was in a school who was sharing with me that his mom had just got laid off. He was 17 years old, but he said he and his 14-year-old brother were working right now to support mom. I can't imagine that. What a young person is dealing with. While at the same time, we have them taking Algebra 2 and we have them taking English 11 and all these other courses. At the end of the day, they don't see the connection with what it is that we want them to do. But at the end of the day, that young person needs to be provided for mentally and emotionally. We talk a lot about well-being and social emotional learning, all these big words in education. What it boils down to is, do young people have the support they need mentally and emotionally to thrive and be successful, knowing that no matter what comes in their way, they can propel from it. And that's just not given to everyone. Just because there are teachers who they may say the wrong thing to a young person. There are adults who might say the wrong thing to a young person. Young people are listening to us all the time. Teachers are listening to us all the time. And so as we go past COVID, and I don't think we're going to be quote unquote past COVID. I was talking to a superintendent today, and I said we need to stop saying this new normal. At the end of the day, the last part didn't work for young people. So why are we thinking that if we just go back to the same thing, that's going to work for young people? But what we can do is say that we're going to make a conscious effort to connect with young people, to make sure they're mentally and emotionally secure. And that at the end of the day, once we've done that, we're going to make sure that they are well. They know they can be successful, and mentally we have charged them up to take on the world. Then we can get to other stuff. Maya Angelou said, a kid doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And we take that, we take that quote and we say it all the time, but we don't really know what it means. The same thing goes for adults. People need to know we care about them, but at the same time, they also need to know that we're holding them accountable too. And so my heart hurts for Baltimore, because at the end of the day, I know, Dr. Santalisa is doing as much as she can. The board's doing everything they can, but it's not just an educational issue. If we really want to change outcomes for communities, we got to think about schools not just as learning hubs for young people, but as social centers for the community. How do we bring job and workforce development into that school? How do we bring adult learning into that school? How do we bring healthcare and dental services into that school? Those are basic things that we take for granted, but that literally, when we start thinking about the society as a whole, over 50% of our kids are not getting those types of basic services. And so I am hopeful, I'm prayerful that post-COVID, cities like Baltimore, Chicago, Atlanta, DC, LA, we will take a holistic view of what we really need to be doing. And so schools are not on these islands trying to do everything that they can by themselves, but we recognize that between 7 and 3 or 8 and 3, kids are not going to get a lifelong lesson unless we bring the community into the school.
And speaking that on the community piece, and that's like that holistic view of schooling to kind of meet their entire need, because as we all know, that many of our students, are suffering from many different things, and many of those things prevent them from coming to school on a regular basis. But if we had that kind of approach of, maybe they get their doctor's appointment, maybe their eye appointment, all that in one place, where they're at 9 hours, pretty much 6 to 7 hours out the day, that would be, I think that would make a tremendous impact. But let's talk about that. In addition to that, let's talk about like how mental health can play a part in the role of our students and their educational background. It kind of falls in line with that holistic perspective. Like what part do you see that, especially coming out of a post-pandemic, and really understanding like the social emotional learning that hasn't taken place in the last 2 years for those students who've been virtual? Like how does that play a part in moving the education of our students forward to help them thrive in this society?
Absolutely. Dwayne, I got into a conversation. Actually, I wouldn't even say it's a conversation. It was a heated disagreement with a very popular superintendent just yesterday on this one. And the reality for me is, we all talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but at the bottom level of that is safety and security. And we think safety and security is food and water, and it is. But when you're thinking internally, safety and security is your own thoughts too. Safety and security is making sure that you are mentally and emotionally well. If you are not mentally and emotionally well, how do you expect to go about the day and push through the day? Those are things that happen over time because you've been given traits, you've been given tools that when things are not happening, you can react this way. And so, I hear people all the time talking about, well, young people are fighting and young people are doing this in our schools and there are disagreements. Well, what did we expect? We transition them back into school without a transition. Society, we're meant to be around each other. Obviously, as adults, what do we think kids are meant to be? They're meant to be around each other and socialize with each other. But we threw them back into an environment they had not been in for a period of time and expected them to pick up where they left off, which was not well to begin with. And so I always remind my educator friends is that every opportunity you have where kids walk through the door, there needs to be a wellness check. Every opportunity you have where a teacher walks through the door, there needs to be a wellness check. People in many cases are not well. And to be honest, and I'm glad we're having this conversation around the stigma and the standard and the practices, people don't talk about it, particularly in the Black community, where if I were to bring this up with my grandmother and my mother, they say, hey, we just got to pray on it. And this is where your faith comes in. And my faith is strong and I pray daily. But at the end of the day, I know I need to talk to somebody too. And if I don't have people in my circle that I can absolutely be honest with, that's a problem. If I have not recognized that I can talk to somebody or that I need to talk to somebody to get my own self well, how can I expect to take care of someone else? How can I expect to take care of my family? And so you brought up something earlier around how do we change the trajectory for young people? We do it easily by modeling for young people. And that's why I tell my son every single day, I love you. This whole, dap up now that you're 12 years old when you're around your friends, boy, come here and give me a hug. Because at the end of the day, I mean, he needs to know that your father loves you. Your father has no problem telling you that he loves you. When you're with your friends, I will tell you in front of them. I'll tell some of your friends I love them because I've gotten to know them. But that type of verbalization of what you want and what you can do and what you're offering young people is really what they need to say, you know what? it's okay. It's okay to tell another man that you love him. It's okay to be there for a brother and to say, okay, what can I do to uplift him, or to be there for a sister and say, what can I do to uplift you? We don't have to be in a competition with each other all the time. And I think that's one of the things that society has done, is that they pushed us to feel like we have to compete with everyone. Well, if
Mm-hmm.
you win and I win, we all win. And at the end of the day, there is enough bread out here for all of us to eat. So I think as we move forward, one of the things that we as adults have to do is be very intentional with telling young people what we want them to know. And as my son told his mom, just being upfront and honest with them. They're going
Mm-hmm.
to find out. They're either going to find out from us, where we're upfront and we're real because we've lived it and we some cases are still living it, or they're going to
Mm-hmm.
find out from Google or one of their knucklehead friends who's going to tell them the wrong thing. So the more we can be honest, that's what I always say. And I'm so excited that no matter my journey and how I got to where I am, I'm living my most genuine, most authentic life right now, where I don't have to worry about if someone feels like X is happening or Y is happening. At the end of the day, I know that if I can take care of my own mental health, and I can showcase that and demonstrate that not only to my 12-year-old son and his friends, but to other young people as I interact with their principals and helping them out as clients, I know at the end of the day, we're going to get better. What we've got to be able to do, EJ and Dwayne, is we've got to be able to share that with other Black men,
Mm-hmm.
other Black women, other Black families, so that we're all doing the same thing. And so it doesn't feel like one person is doing all of this, because one person can't do it alone.
Absolutely. And to piggyback on like that, the whole piece with your son, I really appreciate that, because I think for sometimes we live in the masculine toxicity of our parents' upbringing, or the way we were upraised, or the community that we were raised in. So that means showing affection, or giving them a hug in front of other people, or kissing my son on the forehead, telling him I love him. Is often frowned upon. But for me, I have to make sure that I do that on a regular basis, because I know the impact that it has on him, and it has on me personally, because I'm showing that affection to him, so that he can know that it's okay to show affection to his dad. So I definitely can appreciate that. That's something that I've been working on as a parent, because it's no handbook to this
No
thing.
handbook.
It's no
It's
handbook.
no handbook.
Most of the time we kind of figured it out on our own, and and that's what kind of happened with me. My dad was in the picture, but I still some things I had to kind of figure out on my own once I had my own children. So
Absolutely.
I can appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and that's why there's a frat brother of ours, brother Ron Bell. He's out in Roanoke City, here in Virginia. But that's why I'm very excited about what Ron is doing around the Black Fathers movement, and the initiative that he has. That to your point, Dwayne, we don't have a handbook, and my dad and I didn't become very, very close until I graduated from college, when my dad told me he loved me, and so my son doesn't know that. But I said to myself, how can I correct that, so that once my son has a kid, he doesn't have to deal with the exact same thing. But because there's no handbook, and because we struggle every single day as Black men, in particular as Black fathers, the more networking we have with each other to be able to reach out and teach each other. Curtis Valentine's doing the same thing with Real Men Teach in Prince George's County. It's the more networking that we can provide to each other. We recognize, my brother, we are not in this alone. And when we struggle, it's fine, because we have someone we can call to support us.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I do. What was my next question? It had to do with something. Oh, you spoke a lot about your mentors, and like the key people who kind of help you kind of get to where you are. I mean, besides your mom and your grandma, who were strong figures, who were like those key? I know you mentioned a few of them, but were there any other key factors or key figures that kind of continue to help you grow and are nurturing you even now today?
Absolutely. So, again, raised by mom, grandmothers, they're going to be foundation already. Unfortunately, both of them have passed away, 17 and 19, respectively. But coach, when I was growing up, I was a football player, baseball, track. So coaches were always huge. And because my dad at that particular point wasn't in my life, I gravitated to coaches all the time, and they took me under their wing. But professionally, when that work started, it was really people like Bill Hite, again, superintendent and Philadelphia School District, that really did that work, pushing me up. But at the end of the day, though, again, these are all professional things. I think as men, we really grow when we actually understand our personal lives better, and recognize that we don't have to live at a personal life and a professional life and keep them separate. Our personal life absolutely has an impact on our professional, and vice versa. So as I continue to grow right now, I think for me, it's that circle. And my grandmother told me this would happen when you get older, your circle's gonna get smaller. And I'm so glad that it did, because that smaller circle those are the individuals I go to, whether it's individuals I met professionally or just people who I've been friends with for 30, 35 years, who will tell me, hey, dude, you've not changed since the day we met you. You're still the same down to earth person, and we love you for that. But the one person, if I'm honest with the two of you, that continues pushing me every single day to grow and get better is my son. And so, when I was an educator and before I had kids, I always tell people, I think I was impatient. But when I became a dad, I became reasonably impatient. Like, we're not doing this, because you recognize that your son is going into a society that already is set up against him as a Black man. And how do I then begin to change a system, no matter how big or how small I can do it, to make sure that it's better for him and young people. But as I talk to him today and he comes into his own, he has his own personality, I cannot help but recognize that I have to be better and do better for him, because I am the one role model that, even though he might look up to other people on TV, when he wants to touch someone, when he wants to call someone that is a male role model, he's calling me. And I can't let that boy down. I can't. And I know his friends look up to me because of him. I have other friends. And honestly, I look up to him too. Because at the end of the day, when we look at life and we say life is hard and we got this on our plate and that on our plate, you can look at that boy and we can look at our own kids and say, you know what? All right, life is tough, but you know what? This is one thing I'm going to get right. And that's why I think that he's probably the biggest mentor I have, even though he doesn't look like a mentor in the traditional sense of the word. When you know that someone is counting on you, that's your legacy, that that no matter what happened in your past, that you want to make sure that he has a better future. And whether it's a son or a daughter, that legacy creation that we've done, that's the biggest mentorship that we can have, to say we've got to do better tomorrow. And that's just really improving every single day.
And we want to salute you for, surviving society standards and things that were put in place and not becoming a part of the stereotypical Black male from wherever with no father. We want to commend you for doing all you've done and becoming the man you are and continuing to be the man and father that you are, because you could have fell off, but you're here, and everything you're going through, you're still here, and you're blazing through. So we definitely want to celebrate you and just your tenacity, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and we just really want to salute you on that.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you two brothers on that one. And part of it is I salute you two for just creating the platform for this. This can't stop. We have to continue just bringing the awareness to what we need to do to improve as Black men. And to be honest with you, as Black men, we need to heal. We're carrying so many of the burdens from our past. We're carrying so many of burdens that they're not even our burdens to carry in some cases, but we do it, and we do it in silence. Yeah. And even if I tell the own story of my father and I, how we didn't grow up together, my father and I are close as crap now. And that was the own healing where, I was angry at that point. And it's like, why are you angry? And I had to walk through with counseling to figure out why I was angry. I wanted my dad growing up, but in the day, you either stay mad or you change trajectories for future generations. And so as Black men, what I would challenge all of us to do is to figure out where in our life do we need to heal. Regardless of where that is, we can talk about it publicly, we can talk about it privately. Regardless, we have to talk about it. And once we figure out what that thing is or what those things are, we have to do the work and to heal it. That is the only way that we change the stigma, we change the standards, we change the practice that comes along with it, and we let people know it's okay to say I'm wrong and to right a wrong. It's okay to say, look, I didn't like how this happened, but it happened. But you know what? I'm going to fix this. That's the type of leadership that we need in the Black community, that has to happen with Black men in order to support Black women, that ultimately would lead to supporting of the Black family and the uplifting of the Black family.
Yeah, I think you hit on that with, and I made this statement about a couple of weeks ago. We have to learn to release our parents from their past decisions, and really operate in the spirit like, either I'm going to move forward, or I'm going to stay in the past. And if you want to move forward, you gotta release them from it, and got to understand that their decisions are their decisions. And I said that, and I had to make this self revelation myself. Like when my dad had me when he was 20. So I'm 38 now. So I'm the same age my dad was when I graduated high school. And I was like, I don't got everything figured out. So how can I expect him to have everything figured out?
Yep.
So it was like one of those kind of like, aha, I get it.
Yep.
But, just kind of learning from it and just kind of, learning to move past it and just realize, they made the best decision that they could for that time.
Absolutely. They did do the best.
And we got to make sure that we continue that transformation, but continue that healing and continue moving forward and not allow ourselves to be stuck in that. So I definitely can appreciate that. And, it kind of just reminds me to stay on point at all times. So
I do have one question.
And so this is where, go ahead, EJ.
No, go ahead. I'm asking you. Don't worry. You're not going to get away with it.
No. Right? No, very quickly. This is where our parents talk to us a lot about faith. As my spiritual journey has evolved under like brothers like Anthony Chandler, Bishop Walter Thomas, I've learned that, yes, we talk a lot about faith, but we really need to talk a lot about grace too. And this is giving our parents grace for the fact that, to your point, Dwayne, they made the best decisions they can with the information they had at that moment. We can't continue holding them hostage. For that, we've got to heal. If we make mistakes in our lives, that's okay. We made the decision at that time that whether we thought it was appropriate or not, we've got to forgive ourselves, give ourselves grace, and move on. That's a large part of the healing that comes with mental health and getting rid of that stigma is grace. And that goes, in my opinion, right along with faith.
Absolutely. That's a big thing that I think is we're from that generation that, we didn't have as much, we didn't know as much. And we're now in that age where we're tapping into those that do and finding that middle ground to understand the old and the new. And grace is everything. I mean, that's probably the second or third time I've heard someone say that today.
And we got to give ourselves grace.
Absolutely.
I think that's, to be honest, I think that's if we can have an honest conversation, I think that's the hard part sometimes, because we hold ourselves to such a high standard. And like you said before, we place a lot of weight on our shoulders that we really shouldn't have, not say we shouldn't, but we just put too much on ourselves and not really like depend on the support system that we have, because we internalize things and just kind of keep it in. And it's just kind of like learning to give ourselves the grace to make mistakes, give ourselves the grace to understand that we don't have all the answers. But, as long as we have a community and people that we can depend on and just kind of lean on in those times, that will help us kind of move forward in that situation.
It will. And one of the things that helped me, obviously I went through a very, very public scandal. I had to remind myself, hell, if society is going to beat you up, why are you doing it? And that level of grace right there to say, you know what, look, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to figure out what it is that I did, in the situation. You know what? It gets to a point where you have to tell yourself, you came in this world solo. You're gonna die solo too. But at the end of the day, what happens between those hashtags, you've got to, or between that dash, I should say, you've got to figure out what best good you're going to do. And we all have a story. And I think the way we give ourselves grace, Dwayne, EJ, is we tell our story. And we'll find out, we realize very quickly, we're much more similar than we are different when we tell that story. But we've got to tell that story, giving ourselves grace with true authenticity, because that's where the healing comes in. When it's like, I don't have to sit here and pretend anymore. I don't have to sit here as if things did not hurt or if things did not go wrong. Yes, it did. But because of that, now I'm going to make sure that someone does not fall in that same boat. That's the grace that I'm going to provide myself, that I can serve as a mentor or role model to someone else, regardless of how dark my time was. So to your point, if we recognize that we cannot carry the weight of the world, we cannot. That's how people die. Black people die from stress, anxiety, depression more than any other population, because in many cases, our parents, our grandparents, they carried that weight that we now tend to believe that we have to as well. I started to wonder myself, will my mom still be alive if she was able to get access to some mental health counseling, because she always worried about what was happening with her children. And because she always worried, that takes a health toll on Black families, particularly Black women. And so we've got to give ourselves that grace that we want to improve, at least for the generations that's coming after us.
And it also takes our friends and family to let them know, they still have grace for us. And like I said in the past, I was a fan of you then, and even bigger fan of you now, good brother. So, you have grace here and always will. And just shine us on, man. But I did have one question.
Okay.
Before Dwayne, might kick us off here. So brother Youngblood in the chat let us know.
Hey, if I can count on nobody else, my line brother YB is gonna be there.
He let us know, that you brothers are 22 years in the game. I just wanted to know, can you still do it?
I can. Oh, let me tell you now. I'm good for a good 2 minutes though. Because if you're gonna do it right, you better have some energy behind you.
Yes, indeed.
So every year at homecoming, we're gonna do it, but it's gonna take me probably about a week of training to make sure that if I don't do 2 minutes, I can do 3. But I'm gonna just sit back and let the young brothers. But I'm gonna tell you, that's one of the things that I really learned from Alpha is that there's a network of brothers who, they want you to do well, but they want you to be well. And that's a totally different ball game for someone wanting you to do well, as opposed to wanting to be well. And if you're not being well, you can't do well. And we call YB the motivator for that reason. And I remember when obviously we were going through the intake process, he was motivating us. When my mom died, he was motivating us. And that's the network of brothers and as a community of African Americans that we need, so that when things are not going well, we don't feel like we're in it alone. We can talk about it, because when you're alone in a dark place, you've got to stop digging. And the only way you do that is you got to have a network around you. And that's what Alpha taught me. And so a lot of times now we see each other, we don't even grip each other. It's like we're family now. Because that's what that network has done. And because so many of us are hurting, it's going to take all of us to heal each other.
Absolutely. Shout out to YB.
Absolutely. I love me some YB.
He was at my my initiation process too. So
YB's at everybody's initiation process.
So yeah, definitely, he definitely one of the ones that they brought in to kind of like some fire underneath us.
He will motivate you.
I'll say that.
Hey now, all right.
YB is a motivator.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% motivator. I can approve that message. All right.
But I can't count on anyone else. Him and Ryan Bell, brother Bell, will always be there. But I mean, I can name at least 50 other brothers who, they recognize that when things happen to one, they happen to all. And so in order for one to improve, we all have to be there for that one, because we all need to improve at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Matt, that was Dr. Dance. I want to be professional. Dr. Dance. I'll be informal afterwards. Dr. Dance, I just want to say thank you for consenting to come on to the podcast. Just kind of share your story, share the information. Very powerful, very engaging, and very encouraging. And really gave us some tips on, how we can, have an impact on the African Americans, especially African American males in the school system, and how we can approach that. So I definitely want to applaud you for, kind of sharing that information, and just kind of applaud you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today.
Dwayne and EJ, thank you, man. It was my pleasure. I look forward to seeing you brothers soon.
Absolutely. So likewise. Once again, thank you for joining us for another episode of Unapologetically Black Male, where we talk about surviving the stigma, standards, and systems. Once again, this podcast is meant to highlight the stories of African American men and celebrate their story of success and how they overcome stigma, standards, and systems. Once again, follow us on all social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and make sure you continue to promote this podcast, promote this message, promote the information, so that we can continue to put it out there, and so that we can flood media with positive images of Black men in society. So once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.